Let's talk about IndyRef, actually, in a bit more detail, should we? The former First Minister of Scotland, Henry McLeish, is with us now. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. The Minister wouldn't be drawn on what he wanted to hear from the Supreme Court today. What about you?
Well, I think, Kay, you certainly gave him an exhausting number of questions to answer. But look, this is important. But I believe that we've reached a point in the history of devolution where we've got to step back. Clearly, the Supreme Court is looking at the question of could Scotland move forward, have its independence referendum. But I would rather concentrate on whether Scotland should actually have a referendum. I suspect that there's three possible outcomes. One is that Scotland has the power to proceed with the legislation. Secondly, it is reserved to Westminster as per the Scotland Act 1998. Or thirdly, the court may decide that this is all very premature and they will wait until the actual legislation goes through the Scottish Parliament. So that is one side of it. That's the legal side. But I think the politics of it are much more complex. My belief is that we shouldn't be having a referendum now, next year, or even within the next 5 years. There are so many important issues to be dealing with. And sadly, the SNP have exhausted the political energy in relation to independence, that they're not applying themselves to the kind of big issues that are facing not only the United Kingdom, but to Scotland. And my main thesis is that we need to give devolution a chance to work. That would be looking at the long view, not the short term. And I think that the point has to be made, Kay, that in 1707, we had a manufactured union. In 1997, we started on the devolution road. This is 2022. And I believe there's much more potential in the Scottish Parliament to be realised before we think of moving on.
You were very much involved, I think I'm right in saying, in Tony Blair's government in order to set up devolution or to enable devolution in the first place. Is devolution working so far as you would have hoped?
No, it's not, Kay. And I think that really is the source of my concern. I mean, we have 25 years now of the Scottish Parliament. It's done some remarkable work, but it's not realising its potential. That's partly because since 2007, really, we've had a campaign for independence, but we've had really no debate on where Scotland is actually moving. And if you look at the current situation, like the UK, we're experiencing multiple crises. Scottish public opinion is bitterly divided. There is no settled will. Of course, we have a situation where the momentum for independence has disappeared. And of course, we have a situation which worries me, that Scotland is stalled. We're not applying ourselves to the real issues that we're facing. And that's why I believe we come back to devolution. We've had 25 years. It seems a long time, but in the history of the UK Union, it's a short period. I would like to think we concentrate on some of the bigger issues. We concentrate on some of the policy issues that I think are being neglected. And as far as I'm concerned, the mood, the mind of Scots are not on this question of having a referendum. Look, nobody has a crystal ball. It may well be the case in 20, 25 years' time, maybe earlier, that Scots will decide they want devo max, they want home rule, they want more devolution, they want more independence. But my judgment is this is not the time to be taking these big political and constitutional decisions. It's a time for making devolution work and for the independence campaign to be sidelined so that Scots can concentrate on issues that matter to Scots.
Yeah, but that's democracy for you, Mr McLeish, isn't it? You're not in power anymore. The SNP very much is, and they want a referendum. They say that's what the Scottish people want.
Well, I'm not sure that's that clearly comes from the points you've made, Kay, because look, we have a situation where the country's divided down the middle, 50-50 to be generous. It could be 60-40 in favour of staying in the Union. Look, I think the Union is partly the catalyst for all this unrest. If you look at the contempt, they look at Ireland, the contempt with which they're looking at the Irish protocol with Northern Ireland. Wales they treat with contempt. We have a situation in England where there's restlessness in some of the metropolitan areas. And of course, under Johnson, we had this idea of brutal unionism. So part of my vision is to see that Scotland concentrates now on the issues that matter, but Westminster's got to take a think to itself. It can't continue the way it's going because it's centralised governing of the United Kingdom is perilous for the four nations that make it up. But I think also, Kay, we've got to realise that when we talk about democracy, very few Scots are actually in favour of a second independence referendum now. We have a situation where the country is divided. And of course, there's the famous Abraham Lincoln comment that, a house divided cannot stand. So we've got much to do in Scotland, which has nothing to do with independence. But what we have got to do is to deal with some of these important issues. You're right. I'm not in power. I'm not in politics. But I do think that after looking at the issue for 25 years, being on the floor of the House, taking the legislation through, devolution has got to work better. The Parliament has huge potential, and it's important that not only the Union sees itself not fit for purpose, but the Scottish traditional parties, Liberals, Labour, Conservatives, actually now apply more enthusiasm to the Scottish Parliament and build a way forward. Let's nation build. Let's institutional reform. Let's do a number of things that will make Scotland better. That will give us a chance in the long term to say, OK, is there a next step for Scotland? And at that point, some action may be taken. But clearly, this is not the right time now to move forward in the way that the SNP want to do.
It's great to talk to you again. Thanks so much for taking the time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.